The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throbbing my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly Speaking podcast coming to you Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Talking NBA here with my man, NBA analyst Greg Hrinya with us. It's been a little while. It's been on the pod. Greg, what's going on, bud? Happy holidays.
Hey, how's it going? I appreciate you having me. Always fun coming on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, got lots about. Like I've been saying the last couple of times on the show, like we're now 2 months into the season. This is about 2 months into the season, and like this year has been kind of a little like obviously I know what's going on. I'm following the year, but and I'm a diehard, obviously. But this year, like at least in the first 2 months, like I don't feel as invested in the year so far. And for me, it's probably a lot of reasons. I'm on football right now with college football. Obviously, the playoffs this week with that. You have the NFL playoff, NFL football in general. Just right now is number one right now in the country, and it also obviously it's an election year too as well. So I'm invested heavily into the election and all that stuff leading up to the election. So the NBA is kind of for me in a lot of ways, in comparison, has been kind of the back seat for me a little bit so far, anyway.
Well, what does everybody say if the NBA season doesn't start until Christmas? So
yeah.
I can't blame you necessarily for not getting locked in. And I think that's the whole reason why they set up the NBA Cup was to try and generate more eyeballs before Christmas time, try and make games in November mean something. I don't know if that's done anything, but the goal is to try and pull people in, maybe more casual people to say, oh, Giannis is playing in the NBA Cup. I'm going to tune in. So, again, I don't know if that's worked, but I think that was the goal. And you're certainly not alone, I would say. I've been watching a ton of games, but I'm not going to blame someone for not.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I think also for me, there hasn't been first off, for me, what's been disappointing is the amount of injuries from key players. Like, for example, Orlando Magic, one of the best stories of the first 2 months of the year for me, okay? And even with the injuries, especially, too, but losing Paolo Banchero, he's out till what, January, I think? Maybe longer. Who knows?
No. I would say probably late December, early January.
Okay, good. He's even better.
So maybe 2-3 weeks.
Right. Okay, good. Franz Wagner, he gets hurt a couple weeks ago. He's out now indefinitely. You have Kevin Durant missing time. All the stars missing time. Lucas missing time. It's frustrating. And I look, I get it. These guys are legitimately hurt. So I'm not even saying they're not legitimately hurt. But it's just one of those things where it's frustrating, And then to boot, there isn't really any really great storylines that I can because look, at the end of the day, sports is sports, but we love as fans narratives. We love narratives and stories, and I feel like there's nothing really strong. There's not really a strong storyline to really grab a hold on right now. 2 months in to grab your attention.
Yeah, I think the best storyline would be the Oklahoma City Thunder, but that's not captivating. They're just a good young team. There's no drama. There's no mercurial players or anything of that nature. They're just a good young team. Shea's really good. They've got a good coach that no one's ever heard of. Jalen Williams is really good. They added some good pieces in the offseason, but they're role players. So, it's not like they went out and got Kevin Durant. If Durant had come back to the Thunder, I think that would be what would be leading every show.
Well, not only that, but also the Thunder, what they're doing is that's kind of expected. I think I think if anything, to their credit, what's been impressive for them, and we get to the surprises in a second, is that they've done this with injuries to key guys. Chet, Holmgren's been out for a while now. They just got back Isaiah Hartenstein in the lineup recently, and they're still doing this in spite of the injuries. I think that's actually kind of impressive.
Yeah, and the one thing I would give them credit for is that they're handling the expectations. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
young teams might get expectations. I mean, everybody before the season said, "Oh, they're going to finish the 1 seed in the West, no doubt
Right.
about it." And it's like for a team that really hasn't accomplished much, those are pretty lofty goals. So the fact that they were able to meet those goals, and like you said, with some pretty substantial injuries. I mean, Hartenstein is like a legitimate like piece to what they do because even if Chet Holmgren's healthy, he's not going to be bodying guys like Jokic down in the paint. Like
Yeah.
Hartenstein is the guy who's going to be setting high screens and rolling and diving on the floor for loose balls and defending the other team's big man and guarding the paint. So I mean, they play kind of a different role. So not having him was big, and then obviously you lose Chet. So I mean, those are significant injuries, just like the Orlando injuries almost. I mean, obviously with Orlando, it's a little different because like those are two young guys you don't necessarily expect to get hurt. When you talk about Embiid or Kawhi Leonard or Durant, I mean, these guys are hurt mostly every year. So I mean, like, or Zion Williamson, guys who are hurt constantly. So I don't know that those could be considered surprises. Paolo and Wagner, that would be a surprise because they're both young and don't have an injury history.
Yeah. All right. So let's start here first. I said 2 months into the year. Give me your biggest surprises so far. It could be multiple. It could be a team, players, narratives. What surprised you so far in this young season so far?
I mean, for me, probably the easy one would be Cleveland, just because they really didn't change a lot, except the coach. I mean,
Right,
and
of course.
that's why they're a surprise, because it's not like they went out and added Jimmy Butler and a whole bunch of guys, and it's like, oh, I can see why they're so good. This is the same roster that like basically like was finagling to play the Magic in the first round just so they could win a series, and
Right.
barely even did that.
Yeah.
So the fact that they win pretty much every night, and they've got good wins on their ledger. It's not like
Yeah.
they're just beating also-rans, it's not like they're beating up on the Wizards every night. They've got some good wins to their credit. So I mean, the fact that Kenny Atkinson has come in, he got a raw deal in Brooklyn. And also credit to him is that he waited for the right job, because he had a job lined up with Charlotte last year, which, as you can see from this year and all the previous years, is kind of a dumpster fire. And he pulled out of that job, and he waited one more year and took a job where you got Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, whom he's familiar with, Evan Mobley, who's really taken the next step. And I think that's one of the big differences, that he's gotten a lot more out of Mobley than J.B. Bickerstaff did. I don't think Bickerstaff is a bad coach, but I would say that Atkinson is optimizing their talents a little more, playing with more of that Brooklyn style, shoot a lot of threes, get out in transition. They're allowing Mobley to initiate the offense a little bit. He's not just standing in the corner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what they're doing is working. And so, like, the fact that they were barely winning a series last year, and now you can say, oh, by the time the season ends, they're going to be a top 4 team in the league. That's pretty surprising.
Well, real quick on the clean point, and yet, I'm still skeptical. Bigger picture,
sure.
Like when we get to April, do I still feel that Cleveland is going to be in the conference finals? Look, can I get there? Yeah, absolutely. There's a path. I still think with the surge of Milwaukee recently, New York is starting to get together a little bit now as of late. There's a lot of gelling. They got to work on that. I still think come April and May, you ask me right now, gun to my head, am I taking Cleveland, or New York? I'm leaning New York. If I'm taking Cleveland or Milwaukee, I might still go Milwaukee right now, because I just don't know if what they're doing is going to sustain itself by the time we get to April and May.
Yeah, we'll find out if that translates. I mean, I'm also interested to see if they go out and add someone else. I mean, the interesting thing, and we'll probably touch on it later, is that there's like 8 teams, and it could be more by the time the trade deadline comes, that are going to be in complete fire sale mode. I mean, like, they are going to be getting rid of any half-decent player on their roster because they want to lose games because this next NBA draft is so loaded. So, I mean, there's going to be the potential for some of these good teams to really load up. So a team like Cleveland could go out and get a Dorian Finney-Smith for probably not that much.
Right.
And just slide him right into the lineup. And it's like, oh, now we have a 3-and-D guy to help protect Mitchell, to help protect Garland a little bit. It allows you to play with one big on the floor. He could play the 4, he could play the 3. So, I mean, like, and that's probably only going to cost you a couple second-round picks and some salary. So, I mean, you might be able to get that done relatively easily. And again, not saying that's going to happen, but you go through every team, be it New Orleans, be it Washington, be it Brooklyn, Toronto. A lot of these teams are going to be open for business, and it's going to be a buyer's market. So they're not going to be overpaying. So teams that don't have a lot of assets to trade, they're going to be able to go out and add players. So I think what some of these teams look like now might not be what they look like later. So, I mean, Cleveland still has the potential to add somebody, even though they don't have a ton of assets. And the same could be said for any of the other teams that are contending, especially in the West. I mean,
Right.
OKC could go out and add shooting. Memphis could go out and add shooting. I mean, like, they have assets to do it, and there are going to be teams that are looking to get rid of players because they want to lose games, because they want Dylan Harper, they want Ace Bailey, they want Cooper Flagg. So the only way to get that, I mean, like, you look at what the Nets did with Dennis Schroeder. They came out and it's like, oh, you know, we're 10-13. We're a little too competitive. Like, the last thing we want to do is wind up with the 10th pick and miss out on all these guys and get blown. You know,
you want as many light balls as possible, man.
Exactly. Or a real catastrophe would be sneaking in as like the 8th seed and then getting blown out by Boston in the first round. And now all of a sudden you don't have a shot at the top pick, and you also have no shot to contention. So, I mean, like, you see what these teams are doing. It's like, okay,
yeah,
you know, Dennis Schroeder, you're playing a little too well. We're going to send you to a team that needs you, and we really need the ping pong balls more.
Right. Well, any other teams surprise you?
Yeah, Atlanta has surprised me a lot.
Yeah.
And not just because they beat the Knicks in the NBA Cup, but like, I look at the trade that they made with New Orleans, and this is going to kind of like mirror two teams. One, a huge disappointment. One, a big surprise. Like, you could look at the DeJounte Murray trade that Atlanta made, getting DeJounte Murray, as like a really bad trade. But the trade they made getting rid of him was probably one of the best trades of like the last 10 years. I mean, They got Dyson Daniels, whom I'd rather have just player versus player. Younger player, better defender, can fit in any system, you know, is on his way to being a first-team all defensive player.
So real quick, Atlanta is now 14-13, number 7 East currently right now as of recording. They won 7 last 10 games. They started the season out very slow, actually. So considering where they're at now after the slow start in October and November, I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they're going to win a title this year. Like, they're clearly not. I'm just saying that, like, you can see the path to them being really good in like 2 or 3 years. So, like, they're already good now, and I'm not even counting Trae Young. Like, take Trae Young completely out of it. But, like, Reese has looked pretty good, the number 1 overall pick. He's had his moments. I mean, he had a game against the Knicks where he scored over 30 points. So, I mean, he's flashed. Dyson Daniels looks amazing, one of the best defenders in the league. They also got picks in that deal. So, I mean, that's really what made that an amazing deal. Okongwu is still young on a really good contract. Jalen Johnson is a borderline all-star this year. And so, I mean, if you figure you have him for the next 8 years, you know, that's a really good young nucleus of athletic, rangy defenders at the very least, who can then also play offense. And you've got a good coach in Quinn Snyder.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not even taking Trae Young into account here. I'm just saying, you look at those 4 guys, that's a pretty impressive nucleus that they've got there. You know, maybe with some of those picks, maybe with a contract or two, they go out, not this year, but in a year, in 2 years. And then that's when they go for it and try and infuse some talent in there with them to try.
So they obviously, you know, they're obviously going to take a chance on Trae Young, because by trading away DeJounte Murray last year or during the offseason, obviously that's your clue. They're going to invest in Trae Young as the guy moving forward. I mean, I think Chris Snyder's a really good coach. I think Atlanta, it's hard to bring stars there, but they do have some pieces there, like you said, that they can build around and hopefully compete. Look, I think it'd be hard pressed on to see them winning the East, or you can go into these conference finals with, you know, given where the conference at right now currently. But, you know, at least I'll give them a chance to at least compete in the middle of the pack, though.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't be like an Indiana of last year. Not saying they're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals, but just that they could be a plucky playoff team that could give another team trouble. I'm just saying that based on what the expectations have been the past number of years, where everyone thought that they were going to take a leap. Now they finally get to a point where they are taking a leap when they had no expectations. I think that's pretty impressive and good on them.
Any other surprises?
Probably the Houston Rockets, I would say, just given that I figured that they'd probably be like a play-in caliber team. And so the fact that they're 3 in the West,
17-9 right now currently, won 6 last 10 games, playing good basketball. They're right in the middle of the pack. And I think, to your point as well, not so much the fact they weren't good enough, just the fact that the West is so damn deep.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could be a good team in the West and be 12 very easily. I mean, like, there's really only like Portland and Utah, and obviously, like, some teams will come off of that. You know, they'll start to try and sell assets and move down a little bit. But I mean, it's not like the East where you've got like 6 teams that really don't want to be good at all. You know,
Right.
in the West, you're going to have a team that's going to miss the play-in that had designs on making the playoffs and being somewhat decent. So, I mean, the West is so deep. The fact that Houston is 3 right now ahead of, teams like the
Mavs,
Lakers,
the
Clippers,
Nuggets, the Suns. Yeah.
Nuggets, yeah. You go through it. Yeah, it's Ime Udoka has always been a good coach. I mean, obviously what happened in Boston, but I mean, he's always gotten the most out of his players. And it's not like they've got some bona fide superstar. I mean, Şengün is very good. Jalen Green is good, albeit streaky. Fred VanVleet is a good game managing point guard, very solid. And they've accumulated a lot of really good young players. I mean,
would you say Ime Udoka's right now the runaway coach of the year?
No. I'd say Kenny Atkinson is the runaway coach of the year.
Runaway. Ooh, okay.
I mean, right now, and I mean that's not to say that can't change. I mean, you could also say Mark Daigneault in OKC if OKC wins a very crowded Western Conference. I'd have a hard time taking it away from him.
Yeah. I'll tell you a surprise for me, actually. This might shock you a little bit. I think the Spurs being at 500 is still pretty shocking.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I looked at them before the season, and it's like, would this be a good year for them to just tank one more year? I know it's hard when you have Wembanyama, but it's like, if you could be in the lottery one more year, you have Wembanyama, you have Devin Vassell, you get one of like the 10 players that's going to be really good. That's intriguing. Stephon Castle, I mean, you've got a lot of good young players. Could you get just one more? I don't know what Wembanyama's appetite was for that. But I mean, obviously when they went out and got Chris Paul, it's like, okay, we want to be like a functional basketball team. And also the value behind that is like, we want to show these young guys how to be pros, how to play.
Chris Paul is definitely a net positive to the team, just on maturity and just keeping things stabilized. But I thought and I knew the Spurs would be improved by record, but not much because of the environment around them. But I think the fact they're 13, they're 500 now in mid-December, with all that's going on around them, and that's what also losing Popovich for healthy reasons for a while. Wemby's for some time, a little bit here and there, and they're still functional. I mean, I think that's says a lot about. I think what you're going to see in the years to come is they're going to be a destination place now. People are going to want to play with Wemby now going forward. So I would say if you go into next year, like I wouldn't pick on this year to go to the playoffs or to play in because it's the environment. But if you're looking to next year going forward, and this is just me not knowing the salary cap situation just yet, going to next year, this would be the team I've been watching to crack the not necessarily the top 6, or that could be possible, but definitely a serious playoff play-in team in the middle of the pack as teams, like the Lakers are starting to whittle down with age and all that. And even the Warriors from the degree, I think the Spurs are the one team I think going to next year, you look at it, yeah, that's probably going to be a playoff team next year. Yeah,
it's an attractive destination. I mean, you've got arguably the best player in the league for the next 5-10 years, and you've got no state taxes, and you've got a good culture. And, there's a lot there. And they've got good young players on the roster in addition to Wemby. I mean, again, Castle, Vassell, I mean, they have a good nucleus in place, obviously not to win now. It's kind of like the argument I was making with Atlanta. Like, I don't expect them to win a title this year, but from what the expectations were preseason to what they're doing now, it's pretty impressive.
All right. So what's some disappointments now?
I mean, one for each conference. I mean, I sort of teased it a little bit before with New Orleans. I mean, I think they're far and away the worst or the biggest disappointment. Philadelphia definitely in the East, but I mean, that's more solely injury related. Whereas New Orleans, I mean, like I look at that as some like mismanagement too. I mean, like, again, as I mentioned with the DeJounte Murray trade, I mean, it's too bad that he got hurt, but I mean, like you're giving up a lot of assets to get a guy who I think is a downgrade in terms of, like how does he fit next to CJ McCollum? Right. And also I think this team was built with the idea that, Zion's going to be healthy, and the guy is never been healthy for more than 2 consecutive weeks. So, I mean, they're in a situation where like 4 years ago, it's like they had all these assets. They had like a blank slate of team building, and you look at where they are now, and it's like, Trey Murphy came back, didn't really make a huge difference. McCollum came back, didn't make a huge difference. And I don't know that Williamson is going to come back for more than a 2 or 3 week stretch at a time. I mean, I've always said that he's never been in shape to do it, because you can't be 6'5", 6'6", and put that kind of force on your joints and your extremities. It's just like a lot of weight to carry for a guy who plays an explosive game. It's not like Jokic, where Jokic might be overweight, but like he never really jumps more than like 6 inches off the ground. So
and he has control of his body. Let's just be real. He's
totally like
he knows what he is.
Jokic like lumbers up and down the floor. I don't really. He's not playing like a violent, aggressive style of play where he's like diving into the stands or doing anything that's likely to get him injured.
Yeah.
And again, he's not jumping high enough to really step on someone's ankles. So, I mean, you know, it's with Zion being the same weight as Jokic, being like 6 inches shorter and playing like an explosive, like trampoline style game of high flying dunks and all that, pounding, going into the paint. I just don't know that he's ever going to stay healthy at his current playing weight. And he's, you know, going to have to lose 40 to 50 pounds because I don't know that you can be 280 and 6'5" or 6'6". Yeah. So I mean, I don't know where their future goes from here.
Let me ask you this: if you're the Pelicans now, because obviously a lot of the talk coming to the year was okay, and sort of on my end was okay. Let's see the first 20 games, 30 games, because obviously the Brandon Ingram situation, you know, whether or not he'll be here, be long term, or they're going to trade him. They're in last place right now in the Western Conference, so clearly, I think the obvious is the obvious. They're not going to probably keep Ingram forward. If you're the Pelicans, though, do you blow the whole damn thing up? Like you put Zion on the market, you put Brandon Ingram on the market, and start clean because they have a lot of pieces there. A lot of pieces of players, the McCollums of the world who can help a contender like Cleveland, who can, you know, a guy like Murray who can help a contender. You know, Zion will be a change. Obviously, injuries aside, if he goes to the right market, and of course he's happier and his weight's in check and all that, maybe he goes to the location and he's a better player somewhere else. And Brandon Ingram, another guy who can help a contender. If you're the Pelicans, do you just be done with this situation, or do you double down on this? Because I mean, they have the talent they have the requisite talent to be a competitive team. This year aside, they have shown that when they're healthy, they are a threat.
Yeah, short answer would be yes. I would blow it up to an extent. I read a report yesterday that said that the entire team was open for business except for Yves Missy, the rookie who's playing center, Herb Jones, and I believe it was Trey Murphy was a third guy. Basically, anybody else that's on their roster.
So being Zion too included?
Zion was not on that list. I think that they'd be open to trading him if they got a good deal, but I don't think that they'd give him away. And they probably shouldn't, because it's like whether you keep him on his, I believe he's on a non-guaranteed deal at this point. So I mean, I don't know that it's a financial situation.
His deal is actually not that terrible when you think about it in comparison to other top players. Obviously baked in because of the fact that he can't stay healthy. But if I'm like a team like, I don't know, the Knicks, I'm just throwing the names out. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or the Heat. Okay. Bring him into your culture. If you believe in your culture that you can bring him down here, get him in shape, especially Miami, of course, or even San Antonio, get him in shape.
I think a lot of teams are going to look at it and say, can we get him healthy? Are we going to give up assets for a guy who might never play? So, I mean, it's like, it's a real gamble. Like, it's a very, very risky move because you don't know that he's ever going to give you more than 30 or 40 games a season, and that he's ever going to be healthy in the playoffs. So to give up assets, knowing you might not be getting an asset back, it's almost like Ben Simmons with the Nets. You know, I mean, it's always been in theory. You know, if he were healthy, he would be player X.
I think Simmons, right? I think the Simmons part, though, is more mental with him. With Zion, it's mental, I think, to a point, but you do see when he's on the court, the massive impact he has on that team when he's on the court. I mean, look at 2 years ago when he was healthy, they were literally the 1 seed until he got hurt in December.
Totally. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, from a physical skills standpoint, a GM could talk their way into saying, if this guy were in my system, I could do this with him, regardless of what the reason is for the struggles. You look at Ben Simmons, what he did in Philadelphia, and you say, wow, if I put him around some shooters, this guy would be really great. And now we are 3 years down the line, and he's, you know, even with the Nets, and you could say he's not gotten a softer landing spot in the league because they've basically, you know, there's no pressure on him at all in Brooklyn. So for him to basically just be like,
brother, his NBA career could be done after this year.
Say it again.
His NBA career could be done after this year.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
I don't think any team touches him. Honestly, I don't see it. Yeah,
I mean, unless he's willing to pay for play for like a, you know,
minimum.
Yeah. or a minimum or something along those lines, I could very easily see him playing in Australia or not at all. I don't know how much he loves the game to where he's going to put in the work to get to the level that he needs to be to earn another contract. And if he wants another contract, now's the time to do it, because like the team you're playing on wants to lose games anyway. So you might as well go out there and start jacking up threes and throwing wild passes and running the floor and, playing at a high octane tempo, because like there's no pressure. Like, again, last night they lost by 29 points and that was the goal. So, I mean, it's not like he's playing with any pressure on him to play well.
Right. Any other disappointments for you?
Yeah, I mean, Philly, we didn't go into why Philly. I mean, obviously Embiid, it's kind of the same thing as with Zion. It's just that like chronic knee injuries and, can a guy who's 7 feet tall and 280 and now in his 30s, like, is there just so much wear and tear on his body that he's not going to be able to consistently do it? Obviously, when he gets hit in the face and has a sinus fracture, that's just a fluke injury. But like the knee injuries are the concerning part.
And here's a problem. And here's a problem with them being in the hole they are now. Some teams like Milwaukee, you can expect Giannis to play at least 65 plus games a year. Yeah. So the hole, while it was big early in the year, you figure, okay, at some point they'll figure it out. They'll get out of the hole, which they've done, and they're doing just that. With Philadelphia, though, with their core guys, and I'm not going to include Maxey in this, although he got hurt early in the year, but with the Paul Georges and the Joel Embiids, the hole is too big, and for them to get out of the hole, they need to be available once they are able to play and stay healthy. And that's the problem. They don't stay healthy. So I think this hole is what it is now, and I think they might make the play-in because the East is that bad on the bottom that they may just sneak to the play like they did last year. But beyond that, I just don't know. I mean, I said this with Paul George. It was a gamble to take a chance on him. And I'll say it again. The Joel Embiid thing, I think his window, I'll give it one more year. He's that good a player, but his window is small. And that's not because he's not good enough. I just think he does not take care of his body enough. I think the way he plays is not conducive to a long-term career. He's now 30. He's now 30, I think now.
Yep.
So, and for 30, his size and the way he plays, I look, Joel Embiid, I think the window is like maybe 2 years tops now.
Well, their success is hinging on two old players who are under contract for like a long time. I mean, like George and Embiid, it's not like a 1-2 year experiment. Like Paul George is going to be on your roster when he's 37 years old, making, he signed a 4-year, $212 million deal. So, I mean, he's going to be on your roster making that $52-53 million, and you're not going to be able to get out from under that. Yeah. So, I mean, if he's injured all the time, and, he's played fairly well when he's played, but I mean, he's been injured.
That's the key when he's played.
But I don't know that Maxey and Paul George, I mean, it's enough to beat the Wizards, the Nets, the teams that are like actively trying to lose, the Hornets. But I mean, if you go as a play-in team, like even with Embiid, I don't know that being a 7 seed and having to rely on two old injury-prone guys is going to get you anywhere. And then the one thing I will say for Philadelphia, which is why I didn't rank them as big a disappointment as the Pelicans, is because they hit with Jared McCain. So I mean, he's been really good. I mean, I know he suffered a knee injury, not like an ACL or anything, but I mean like a sprained knee. So I mean, that is kind of a tough blow for them in what has already been an injury-riddled season. But I mean, you look at him and it's like, okay, we got a guy who could be part of our long-term process here, no pun intended. So you have Maxey, you have McCain. You can at least say, okay, if it doesn't work out with George and Embiid, we at least have ways to pivot into the next generation. With New Orleans, I don't really know where they go because the three guys that were untouchable, based on the report, Murphy is a good 3-and-D player, but he's not a star. At least he hasn't shown that capability yet. Herb Jones is an all-defense caliber player, but I mean, he's not going to go out and score 35 points. And Missy is a rookie who, looks like a nice player, but I mean, he's still a rookie center. So, I mean, like, I don't know that any of those guys are like dramatically changing your fortunes. And every other guy's a question mark. Ingram's a question mark. Williams is a question mark. I'm sure they'd trade DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum today if they could, but it's not, the way the salary cap is structured, I don't know that it's going to be that easy for teams to make deals for high salary players. I mean, you look at a guy like Zach LaVine, like it's not easy to just cobble together $40 million in salary and make a trade. And so or like Jimmy Butler, that how do you make that trade work,
Right.
knowing that he's got $50 million a year? What good team just has $50 million a year lying around? Like the easy solution would be for a team like Brooklyn to say, okay, here's Ben Simmons' contract and picks, but it's like they don't want Jimmy Butler, at this stage. They want to lose and get a good draft pick. I don't know that teams like Golden State or Houston just have that money lying around. And that goes for like a lot of guys around the league. I mean, it's been theorized that you're going to have a lot of trouble moving guys that make more than like $25 million a year just because of the way the salary cap is structured. And with the first apron and the second apron and getting hard capped and having to take back an equal amount of money, it's going to be tough for a lot of teams to make trades in that sense. So from a New Orleans standpoint, I don't know how easy it's going to be for them to get off of a guy like McCollum, even though I think he would make sense in a lot of different places. Does he make sense on a contender that also has the necessary salary to shed?
Well, the good news for Philadelphia is that they're only game and a half back of the playing situation. Okay,
sure.
Two of those teams in the playing situation, I don't expect them to be there. Chicago and Detroit, especially in Chicago, if they're going to be selling players, before the deadline. Detroit, look, they're a young team, they're on the up and up, but I don't expect them to sustain this, but we'll see. So they have a chance to crack that top 10 to get in the playing at least. But yeah, like I said, this window though, I mean, I guess they have the guys for 3-4 years by contract, but how effective will they be, moving forward, and especially now what they have salaries that don't allow them to make as much, effective moves to help around the edges when need be, especially with Boston being where they are and New York being where they are, and Cleveland now is really good, and even Milwaukee is back down to playing good basketball. So there's a lot of things there in Philadelphia to be concerned about long term. For me, disappointment for me, I'll tell you what now. My biggest disappointment for me, this is easy. The Kings. The Kings are a massive disappointment for me. They're right now number 12 in the West, one game under 500. I thought they would try to. I mean, look, I was really let down last year in the playoffs when they lost in the play-in to I think it was New Orleans. And I thought, okay, well, look, it happens. I get it. The West is it's competitive. I get it. But now where they're at currently, and look, things can turn around in the weeks to come. Obviously, the West Conference is very fluid. But to be, right now 12 in the West right now with all that talent, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, I had a list of 4 teams. So it was the Pelicans, the Sixers, the Kings, and the Lakers.
Kings one is true. Okay.
Yeah, so I had the Kings on my list too. Mainly not just because they're not playing that well, but because I feel like they think they should be playing well, and they're going to throw good assets, throw good money after bad. So I feel like they're going to try and rush a move or two and make possibly a dumb trade to try and get to be like an 8 or a 9 seed. I think that they're going to double down on what they're doing, which probably isn't a good long-term strategy for them. So not only have they not been that great, but I think they might make it worse. So that's part of the reason why I have them as a disappointment.
So you say they better stay the course. Better to stay in the course and see if they can.
Yeah.
I mean, was the DeMar DeRozan move not a good move, you think?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know that he has really impacted a lot of winning in a lot of places that he goes. I mean, he's not like this incredible defender, and he can't shoot threes. So, I mean, all the damage that he's going to do is in the mid-range. And you have other guys who you're already relying on in crunch time, in Fox and Sabonis, to get the ball. So if he's not doing other things, I don't know that he really makes a lot of sense there. Like, at least Malik Monk, can space the floor. So, like, he can hit a 3 from 30. So he's at least allowing Sabonis and Fox more room to operate. I don't know that DeRozan allows them more room to operate because he wants to play in the mid-range.
Right.
So, and he's not a great defender. I mean, like last night, they lost a game to the Nuggets, and it was a fascinating end of the game because like there were a little less than 3 minutes left, and the Kings were up by 8, and they wound up losing by 1. And it's like because they could not get a stop. So
they were up late because last night I went to the bar to watch the football games, and I turned on I had a league pass on with my friends. We were watching football games. Of course, there was 2 games last night. And then I turned on the Nuggets game against the Kings, and the Kings were down, I think, 20 or 22 in the first half. and then we left the bar after the games were over. I totally forgot about the game. You know, it was like I said, not invested like heavily like I normally am. Went home to my wife. You know, we had a conversation, whatever, and then we just forgot about the game. And all of a sudden, I ran to check the game. All of a sudden, I see the Kings lost by only 1 point. I'm like, oh, they came back. Couldn't find out. You just said they were up by 8 actually in the fourth quarter. You know, and I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, they are a big disappointment. Like I said, things have changed in the weeks to come in the Western Conference. It's very fluid. But why the Lakers though? Also on your list.
Just because I think that their roster around AD and LeBron really isn't that good. So I don't see them being contenders. I mean, if anything, they should be one of those teams that's looking to like rebuild. Because I don't like Dalton Connect is a good player. I love that draft pick. But like outside of that, like, you know, they're starting Max Christie. Austin Reeves is okay. Rui Hachimura is solid. But like, I don't see a championship team there. I mean, you're probably looking at a play-in team. And it's like, I feel like you're starting to see some aging from LeBron. I mean, obviously you've seen it over the years, but I mean, like if he's not playing every night and it's just Anthony Davis and then Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell and all that. I mean, the West is really good top to bottom. So it's like, you're going to have a tough time staying above water. And so I don't know really where they go from where they are now, having like almost no assets.
They're in a situation where they are similar right now in 2024 to where they were surprisingly around the same time 10 years ago, post like late Kobe years, where they are somewhat competitive just before they fell apart. But because they don't have enough assets to get better, and they have two guys taking up contracts. And LeBron, there's obviously the investment in LeBron because even though LeBron is 40 years old and still pretty good, but you're seeing a lot of the him looking older, whatever. You know, he still draws seats to Staples. I still call Staples a record. That I think that there's an element of them feeling stuck with this because, well, yeah, we weren't that good, but you know what, business is still pretty good, and we're still selling games because LeBron's still in uniform. And I get all that. But they're in a very weird spot now to where they can get better. And for the future, they got two. Well, I say two, but really one. I think AD is the only really the other two guys that are you can realistically trade to a team and get back some really good parts for him. Because I think LeBron, you know, look, LeBron's older and it is what it is with that one. He dictates where he goes. But they won't do it because of the situation. Like LeBron, you got to keep him happy also too. So they are in a very weird spot. But the thing is, the reason why I do somewhat agree with you to some degree is that that's a good roster, actually, they have. They actually have a good roster. Like, they're competitive. They won 47 games last year. I think they won the same amount the year before that, you know, in a conference that's relatively tough to crack 50. And they went to conference finals 2 years ago with the same roster. And they should be better than they are now, in my opinion. I agree with you on that.
It's a good roster if AD and LeBron are playing. But I mean, if LeBron's not playing, now it's not a good roster. And if AD, I mean, like, I never expect AD to play 82 games. I mean, like, he's
been healthy. He's been healthy, though.
He has been healthy, but, like, what if he's not healthy for a 2-week or 3-week stretch of time?
Yeah.
In the West, like, that's tough. So, I mean, like, you've got two guys who have a lot of wear and tear on them, obviously for different reasons. LeBron, he's just a lot older, and AD's got a long injury history. Now, if you take one of those guys out of the equation, the West is so deep that it's like, I don't know that roster is going to carry you to anything more than a play-in team.
If that is point, 2 weeks, because in 2 weeks we can look at the Kings in that spot. That was mentioned earlier.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm with you on that one, man. I think the Lakers are a little disappointing. They started well when the year started. I still think Redick's the right guy. I think Redick's doing a good job there overall. I just think that the situation is just hard to navigate when you have guys that just are missing time. You know, it is.
And maybe Redick would be better suited for a team that was like totally young, like all young players that he could like implement a culture and a style of play, etc. But like, I feel like he got the job because he and LeBron are friends and they had a podcast together. So
of course. MVP race. I mean, it's early, obviously, but I'm going to ask you, give me you want to rank them, go ahead and rank them. Give me your top 3 through 2 months, obviously, MVP candidates, in your opinion.
The three are easy. The ranking would get hard, but just three in no particular order. You're going to say Giannis, Jokic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think those are
Giannis 1.
No, not necessarily. I mean, that's fluid, as you would say.
How would you rank right now at December 17th? How would you rank right now today?
I would say it's probably Jokic, Giannis, and then Shai. But I mean, that's not to say that if the Bucks finish with a top 3 or 4 record in the East, that I wouldn't give it to Giannis.
So I agree with 3 guys. That I agree with you on. However, I'm surprised you put Shai first.
No, I didn't put Shai first. I have Jokic first.
No, I'm surprised you didn't put Shai first.
Yeah.
That's how I would go. I would go Shai first, Jokic second, Giannis third, and only reason Giannis in the conversation now is that now they're winning games again. But what OKC is doing, again, we discussed earlier in the podcast, without those pieces, and
True.
Shai's still balling, and the 20-5 now and run away to the Western Conference, I think it's impressive as hell.
Yeah, I look at their rosters as being really good. Obviously, to your point, they have the injuries, and it's totally fluid. I could see him being a runaway winner, in a month's time. And the same could be said for Giannis. I mean, he's carried that team. He's totally carried it. So, I mean, without him, I mean, they're a bottom 3 team in the East. So, I mean, the argument could be made for both of them. But, I mean, I could make the argument, too, that Jokic's numbers, analytics or just his regular numbers, are so far and away above everyone else. And, I don't think their roster is that great. They've lost a lot of guys throughout the years. So, the fact that he's keeping them above water with, they've had injuries to Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, and, they don't really have a bench. So, I mean, they're relying on Hunter Tyson and Julian Strawther to give the minutes. I mean, it's Peyton Watson's of the world. They don't really have a great roster. And Jamal Murray, I don't know, is a guy that you can really count on. Porter Jr.'s on a max contract as a player. Not to say he's a bad player.
Which is crazy, Greg, because so they won the title last year and a half in calendar time, not so much 2 years ago, but year and a half calendar time. And we're sitting there saying, I think you and I even discussed in the podcast that Denver's window is probably 4 years, because their core, the 4 guys of Murray and Jokic and, Porter Jr. and Gordon, they all locked into deals these 2-3 next 3 years. And now also I'm looking right now, it's is the window shut now or shutting?
Perhaps. And
right, you see, the fact that we're considering that now, only a year removed, it's wow, what the hell happened in 1 year?
I don't begrudge them for giving Jamal Murray the money, because I think that he and Jokic play such a good 2-man game. That's something that they, last night down the stretch, every player was a 2-man game with them, just playing off each other. Mm-hmm. But I mean, with Michael Porter Jr., for example, could that money be spread out among 2 or 3 other guys that would better serve your purposes? Could you have used that money and re-signed a Caldwell Pope and then gone out and signed 2 other players? Or could you have kept Caldwell Pope, Bruce Brown, and then gone out and gotten another guy? Right. And now you have a deeper roster instead of that one guy who's hit or miss on any given night.
Yeah. I think Denver's. I think when you have the surging OKC Thunder, you have the surging Memphis Grizzlies also too. Now with Ja actually, back and he's doing his thing. You saw what Minnesota did them last year in the playoffs. I think Denver. I'm surprised that we're here only a year later, and I wonder also too, to their credit, if Denver fails again this year, do they look at the roster and start looking at guys to get rid of? Porter Jr., Gordon. Do they start looking at maybe taking on, because remember that second apron is coming, so and I think based on the numbers, they are possibly a casualty of that very soon based on the current roster.
And that's what they said the reason was for why they didn't bring back a guy like KCP or some of the other veterans.
It made sense, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if there's going to be a huge appetite for Porter Jr.'s money with his game. It's not, and again, it's not that he's not good, but I mean, he's an elevated role player. He's not
he's a one-trick pony. His point.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a guy that you're going to say okay, he can be my star alongside Giannis. Let's say, I mean, if you just, let's say Dame wasn't there and you put him next to Giannis, I wouldn't expect anything from that. Right. So I mean, for a guy making that kind of money, he should be that caliber of player. And when you're locked into that in this new salary cap world where the mistakes matter at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I made a mistake there.
Well, speaking of trades and trade rumors, the Jimmy Butler saga is definitely heating up a little bit here. So there's a report last week that said that Jimmy Butler was open to getting traded to X amount of teams. We saw 3 teams mentioned, even a 4th one that his agent denied in Phoenix. But of course, Shams Charania of ESPN put his name on it and said, no, this is true. And I actually agree with Shams for the record, because I think agents like the bullshit and all that good stuff. I guess for me as a Heat fan, like I've had the same position I still do today. I'm even more bolden now on that. Like, there is no way we can pay Jimmy Butler the money he's paying at his age, also where his game is at and going, and expect this team to be competitive in the future. I am with the Heat on this one, that we can't do that. This guy cannot. You can't pay this guy $56 million a year at age 36. With a game that's not permanent base. His game's not going to age well. He's not Kevin Durant. Like, Kevin Durant, I'll pay that in a heartbeat, because Kevin Durant's game, even at 36, 37 years old, is aging well. And Miami, and I think Miami knows this. I think Miami knows where they stand, and I think Miami is actually okay with Jimmy walking. Like, we saw a report that I think over Sunday about, like, Jimmy Butler intends on opting out his contract this coming summer, which is due $52 million. I still would not be shocked if he opts in, honestly, because that's a shit ton of money. And I think depending where the Heat land this year, I think Butler will be on the roster the rest of the year, despite all the rumors. But I think depending on where the Heat go the rest of the year, I still think that there's a chance he opts in. Honestly.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with all that. I mean, from the agent playing games all the way up through them being better off without him in the long term, and also them not being able to trade him. I mean, as I was mentioning earlier, it's not easy to trade a $50 million player. Like, if you look at a team like Houston, and they probably really want Jimmy Butler, but it's like, how are you making that work unless you're willing to move Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, and you also have to throw picks in, and it's like, now you're gutting your roster for a guy who's older, and you're gonna have to give a long-term deal to in the offseason. So, like, that doesn't make sense. Phoenix, I mean, the only way you make that deal is with Bradley Beal, and I'm sure he'd waive his no trade clause for that. But, like, why would Miami want Bradley Beal? I mean, he's having knee injury or knee issues similar to Embiid as well, like knee swelling. That's not like injury related. It's just like, he's an older player who's got knee swelling that's probably going to be chronic. So, I mean, it's like, why are you making that trade? That doesn't make sense for the Heat. The only trade that I could really maybe see would be like Golden State, just because I feel like they've got like a couple younger players that maybe if you packaged like Wiggins and Moody.
But does he fit in Golden State though? In your opinion?
Not necessarily. No, probably not, because he's not an outside shooter. But I mean, he would at least take some of the pressure off of Steph. Right. But I mean, I don't see him getting moved because I don't know how the logistics work on a deal, because there aren't a lot of $50 million salaries lying around just waiting to get moved. The only reason why I said Golden State was because I'm like, okay, they could take Andrew Wiggins' contract and then add a couple of those 1-year deals, like a Gary Payton or Kevon Looney or whomever, and then they could make it work financially. But then you also have to incentivize the Heat for doing that by giving them picks. And it's like, now if you're the Warriors, you're gutting your team asset-wise in terms of what you can trade for a guy who still needs a contract, who's still old, who's still injury-prone, and whose game is not like aging gracefully, let's say.
And I say this too also, the very next morning after he had a triple-double against Detroit.
Yeah, no. And look, he was great the other night. I mean, his numbers were like, you won't see a stat line like that many times ever. I mean, it was like 35, right. 19, and 10 or something like that. I mean, he really played well, and they still lost. So, I mean, like, what does that tell you about the state of their team? I mean, if anything, like, they should be leaning into playing the younger guys, the Jovic's, the Pell Larsons.
Which you've been doing. You've been doing that.
Yeah. The Jaime Jaquez's.
I've been saying that Jimmy Butler right now is even the second best player on the team right now. I think right now, based on performance and availability and whatnot, I would say Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero are the two best players on the team right now currently. Okay, Jimmy Butler, when he's there, yes, we can make the argument, but he's gotta be available. And he's another guy that's not always available. This is why he's called Playoff Jimmy.
And let me go off on a tangent here for a second. Like, speaking of Miami, how embarrassing is it that you look at like Tyler Hero and how great he's playing, and now all these people across the league are like, oh, he's playing great. Like, I'd rather have him than Dame right now. When it was time to make that deal 2 summers ago, everyone was like, oh, you can't take that deal because like Tyler Hero isn't good enough and those draft picks aren't going to mean anything and yada, yada, yada. And it's like now, man for man, you'd rather have Tyler Hero than Damian Lillard. But 2 summers ago, because everyone didn't want to see Dame going to Miami because Miami always gets their guy. It's just embarrassing. Like I saw Kevin O'Connor the other day on Twitter was like, I'd rather have Hero right now than Lillard. And I'm like, wait a minute, you were the guy leading the charge saying
he was the guy in charge about that.
You can't make that trade. That's an embarrassing trade. You have to hold your ground and, wait for a better deal. And it's like now, like, I don't know, 18 months later, all of a sudden, Tyler Hero is the better player. It's like, the whole reason you would make that trade if you're Portland, whether you needed him or not, is because he's a decade younger.
Yeah, and a better salary too, also.
Yeah, and a much better salary. So I mean, like, I just don't like how Miami was basically people didn't want to see Pat Riley get his guy, so they bullied everyone into thinking that was an awful trade offer to get him, and now all of a sudden Tyler Hero is playing like an all-star, and it's like, I guess it would have been okay.
Well, I already said I've always speculated for years that there's definitely a conspiracy against Riley and the Heat.
Yeah,
for a reason, for the LeBron years, and they're paying for it now in terms of transactions. Maybe I'm just being a little too in my feels because I'm a Heat fan itself, but the vibes have always felt that way. That has been like a conspiracy against the Heat and against Pat Riley and that bunch.
No, the reason why that all happened, let me just finish on that point, is like the Bill Simmons and the Kevin O'Connors of the world. I mean, they're Celtics fans. And so the Celtics and the Heat had the rivalry all those years when LeBron did a decision and wanted to go to Miami. And they didn't like the fact that their team was a victim of that decision. And so now like Pat Riley is going to have that held against them forever. And they're like big names in the NBA media stratosphere. So, I mean, they're going to make noise.
Which is so silly, though. I mean, come on, dude. I know it's your team, but I mean.
But Miami's always going to go big game hunting, and people aren't going to want to see Pat Riley get his guy. So they're always going to try and diminish what Miami has to offer.
How do you think it plays out for Jimmy, though, in this saga? You think he'll be in a uniform rest of the year?
Yes, I do, because I just think it's going to be too hard to trade him. I mean, look at Zach LaVine. I mean, he makes like $10 million, not $10 million, maybe like $8 million less, $7 million less, and there's no market for him. And he's playing great, by the way.
And he's 6 years younger, I think, too. Also,
yeah, and he's younger too. But like, it's a hard thing to move $40 million in salary. It's just hard to move some of these guys, like a Vucevic or Jimmy Butler or any of these guys. It's just going to be hard to move a contract of that size, no matter how well the guy's playing.
Do you think?
I've long said that Zach LaVine would make sense in Orlando, but then the argument becomes, how do they aggregate enough salaries to ship out for him?
Correct, right.
Like now you're shipping out some of those valuable role players, like a Wendell Carter Jr., guys that you need to get a shooting guard who's got an injury history and, is kind of like, just a scorer. He's not going to play great defense. He's not going to be a great playmaker. Right. So that's why I think it's hard to make a lot of those deals. I think it's a lot easier to trade a guy, going back to the Nets, like a Cam Johnson, who's making $23 million. It's like, okay, like OKC, Memphis, they can cobble up enough money to make that deal work, and throw a pick in or throw 2 picks in to expedite that deal. It's harder to do when a guy makes double that.
Do you think the new CBA is making it harder for teams to move big contracts now?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's why there's such an importance on drafting. Like, you have to be a good drafting team because...
Which I like for the record, because they actually force a few teams to really build out their rosters now.
Yeah, you can't just throw money at a problem and make it go away. Like, you have to actually do a good job of building out your roster. So, I mean, but there are so many limitations with the aprons. Like, once you get to the first apron and you trade a guy, you get hard capped. And so other trades that you make has to be like a dollar for dollar match. I mean, it's like, it becomes very restrictive, which is why you saw Boston just re-sign all their guys and go well above the second apron, because it's like, we're not going to be able to move off this core. Not that we want to, but we don't really have the ability to pivot off this core. So we might as well just keep it together for as long as we can.
Right. What do you think about the NBA Cup? Are you a fan of it?
I guess. I mean, like, I'll watch the games. It's entertaining. A knockout style thing. But I mean, like, I'd be watching the games anyway. So I mean, like, I think as someone who's a diehard fan, you're into it. But like, I don't know that if I was just a casual fan that I would care about it at all. And I mean, the players don't really do a good job of building it up either, because like you see guys like Josh Hart, and I just saw a thing from J.R. Smith earlier. J.R. Smith's like, oh, if I won that, I'd have 500 grand to just blow on anything. It's not like he's not looking at that as like, oh, this is salary that I'm gonna stow away in the bank. He's like, oh, I'm just gonna go blow it on a car or whatever. Like, it's found money basically. And Josh Hart was like, oh, I could use a new watch. So I mean, it's like they're not making it sound like this is something that's
At least
like,
they're honest, though. At least they're honest about it.
that's true. But if you're the NBA who's trying to sell it, and you have all these outlets like ESPN when they broadcast the games saying, oh, this, they're trying to dramatize it, but then you got the players in the post game basically like making light of it. It's kind of like a hard sell for the NBA to make it seem like it's this monumental thing.
It's gonna sound weird though, but I think having the courts the way it is now, the colored courts now, for me personally, and maybe it's me being petty, it makes me less enticed to watch the games. Actually, it's too distracting.
That, and it makes it seem like a gimmick. Like when you see a team run out there on like a blue floor,
it's less serious to me.
It doesn't have that level of seriousness to it.
Yeah. But you and I are in the same boat. Like when they initially had this idea, and I said, okay, whatever. Just don't let, as long as it does not disrupt the season, I'm good. And to their credit, it does not do that. Outside maybe some of the little rules here and there, the point differentials, all that stuff, it does go with the flow of the season. That and look, I admire the NBA for wanting to create more commerce. I'm not against that whatsoever. But again, the NBA Cup is for the casual. It ain't for me, because I'm still watching game number 12 anyway. Heat Wizards, no matter what, regardless if it was during the Cup or during the regular season. So for me, it doesn't move the needle for me at all. My question is this though, and I don't know where the ratings go on this. I know last year it did okay. Actually, they were okay with the where the ratings were at, given where the time of year it was. But do we see this a third year next year? Or beyond? I mean, what's the feedback on this thing?
I mean, I'd imagine they're going to keep doing it, but I mean, I can't see the ratings being good for it, because I saw the ticket prices for these things, and they were probably like giving tickets away. They were charging people like $78 to get into these games.
Are they priced out now in comparison to the regular games? Priced more? Priced higher?
That's a good question. I mean, the games are being played in Vegas, so I mean, like, there's
right. True.
So it's not like Madison Square Garden regular season game versus Cup game. But I think last year the tickets were like, $210, let's say, and this year they're going for like $80. So I mean, like, and again, that's not like a courtside seat. That's just like what the average person, would get into the game for. So I mean, I feel like that probably says a lot there. I don't know that it's wowing the average person the way that the NBA would want it to.
I mean, and again, I think we need to chalk up to this. It's the time of year. We'll get to the ratings in a second, because that's the last thing on this podcast I'll talk about. Football is king.
Yeah.
Football is an event sport, and they always have an inherent advantage no matter what, because it's an event sport. Whereas basketball, baseball, and even hockey, it's a flow. It's 3-4 games a week, of the same team. So it is what it is. I like I said, I admire Adam Silver for being progressive and trying to improve the product. And look, if it's not hurting the product, I'm okay with it. The one big change for me for the NBA Cup is stop the color courts. Just put NBA Cup somewhere on the court, somewhere, a decal somewhere, please. I don't need a color court. To me, I swear to you, I'm being honest when I say this. I am less likely to watch a game because of that.
No, I agree with you. It does. It's distracting, and it seems like it's cheapening the product.
Yeah, it really is.
So it comes off like a gimmick as opposed to something that's to be taken seriously. So I'm in lockstep with you on that one.
Right. So okay, last thing we got out here. So one of the big topics we've been hearing about these first couple months of the season is, outside of basketball, of course, is ratings. And ratings has always been a thing we've discussed on here throughout the years, but we're seeing numbers that's come in, recently, where ratings are massively low. I saw some numbers recently that the ratings are down from last year. Well, maybe in comparison to another year. It was like 10 years ago or last year, but ratings are down as much as 40-something%. And I want to be honest too, also, because I do think there's a lot of things that play a part in this. There's people who've lost interest in the NBA through the years, whether or not it's because of social justice or just the aesthetics of the game itself, or just other things people do, or no interest in today's players. There's a lot of things you can bake in. But why are the numbers so low right now in comparison to other previous years, in your opinion?
I think it's a lot of things. One, I think we touched on is the injuries. So, I mean, like, on a given night, you don't know who's going to be playing. Like last night, for example, the Sixers are playing the Hornets. And, I mean, you have no Joel Embiid, and then the Hornets are, missing a boatload of guys. LaMelo Ball played. But, I mean, like, you can just go game to game, and it's usually, like, a long list of guys not playing in the game. And to your point on football before, like, football is a once-a-week event. And the fact that the NBA plays so many games, there's really not a great importance on any one given game. So, I mean, and I've always said, and I know they'll never do it, so it's not even worth saying that they should, but, like, if the season were 55 games, I think the interest would be dramatically different. Because if a team were playing, one game during the week, one game on the weekend, and that's it, especially when football season's over, if you have every team playing a Saturday night game or a Sunday night game, you could probably make some theater out of that. But they're not, neither side is going to go for that because of the loss.
No, of course not.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, that's not even worth discussing. But I mean, like, they just play so many games that there's not a huge importance on any one. And given that there's not importance on any one, guys missing a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, in Kawhi Leonard's case, missing, the entire season up to this point, with knee soreness or whatever, like, there's just not an importance on a single game, and guys are injured and they take a lot of time off. And I think that probably turns the average fan away, knowing like, oh, I'll just tune in for the playoffs. Also, I would say it's a stylistic thing. So the injuries, that would be one thing. Stylistically, I think that the talent level in the league is greater than it's ever been before, but the style that they play is just chucking a bunch of threes, which really does not
see that.
It doesn't highlight the skill level. So, like, you look at a guy like Jason Tatum. Tatum's going to shoot 10 threes a game, and he's not really a good three-point shooter. I mean, like, he'll go 4 of 11, but it's like he's not a great shooter, but he can get any shot he wants. He's so talented. He's so gifted. He could get to the rim at will, but yet he'll settle for 11 threes a game. And it's like, that's not really good basketball. Just like turning basketball into a math equation where it's like, we're going to shoot 50 threes a game. It doesn't require a lot of great coaching. It doesn't require a lot of great innovation. It's just a lot of dribble handoffs and high screens and, setting, horn sets and guys just coming off of screens and chucking up threes. I mean, like, that's not that visually enticing. Like, where's the basketball that the Spurs used to play with Duncan and Ginobili and Parker, where like every guy is touching the ball on a given play and you're getting a layup, or maybe you're getting a three, but it's a wide open three. It's not
right. As someone who loves 3-point shooting, I really do. It's too much. And I think a lot of it too, also, maybe you agree with me on this one. There's got to be a balance. Like, yeah. I want 3-point shooting, yes, but I also want mid-range game. I also want low post action. And I feel like the rule changes through the years created this. Not allowing hand checking, not allowing physical play has allowed this now to happen. I think if you bring back, I'm not saying go back to the 90s bully ball. I'm not even suggesting that, because even in the 80s, they allowed that stuff. In the 80s, they're still scoring the high 120s, 100s a game, even with physical play. I think if you allow some physical play in basketball, it will at least alleviate some of that issue, I think. What do you stand on that?
No, totally. And it's funny. You beat me to it, really, because I retweeted something earlier this morning. It was a clip from when the Magic and the Knicks were playing on Sunday night, and it was Jalen Suggs just absolutely hounding Jalen Brunson. And like the comment to that clip was like, oh, he fouls him multiple times, by the time he crosses half court. And I'm like, that's what the league is missing. They're missing a guy who's willing to pick up, from 70 feet away, who's going to run with the guy step for step down the floor. He's going to get his body into you. He's going to hound you. He's going to make it difficult. You just don't get a lot of that. So, I mean, like, you're not getting the physical play. And to your point, like, the low post has basically been taken entirely out of the game. I mean, a guy like Porzingis is 7'4", and like, he's going to shoot way more threes than he's going to play in the mid post. And like Wembanyama wants to shoot threes more than he wants to play down low. I mean, his game is like a perimeter game. And it's like you realize that like you can practically dunk the ball without jumping. Like, so I mean, it's like watching him out there shoot 32% from three. It's not really that appetizing considering you could be doing so much more. He could be down low in the post and then have shooters spacing the floor around him. And he's got the skill to score in multiple ways.
I wonder if Adam Silver's aware of this. And if
sure
so, how do you address it? Because I think the physical play part will fix that problem. Because people say, "Oh, well, you have more injuries." Not necessarily. You have more injuries now, even without it. So it's not going to change the diagram much anyway. I think the aesthetics is what really is really the big thing. I think obviously injuries play a factor in that, of course. I think some things with some of the politics through the years play a factor to some degree. But I think the aesthetics, the big complaint you hear now, even from people who love the game, like us, is aesthetics. And it's the fact that you have, for example, look at that game on Sunday, Warriors and Mavericks. 48 3-pointers made. Look, it's cool. I love 3-point shooting. I do. But that can't be the only thing you're providing. I'm sorry.
I'm fine with it if the shots are wide open. But when you have guys that are just take the step back 3-pointers, like that's not really a good aesthetic shot. Because it's a guy just heaving a ball at the rim saying, I'm either going to get fouled, it's going to go in, or we've got a good chance of getting the rebound. Like that's not like smart basketball. It's not good coaching. It's just aesthetically unpleasing. So not to say guys can't do it. I mean, James Harden did it great last night. Obviously, he was playing Utah, but I mean, he had 41 points in 3 quarters and hit a bunch of those. I mean, he had 5 3-pointers in the first half, and that's like his kind of shot. So it's not to say you can't be effective with it, but opening night, perfect example when Boston played the Knicks. Now, Boston was hitting their threes, so you can't complain about it. But I mean, it was just 3-pointer after 3-pointer after 3-pointer. And you saw a lot of people complaining after that one game. And I'm like, look, don't complain. It's not their fault that they made a lot of them, but they don't always make them. And then that becomes kind of hard to watch when a team's taking 55 or 63s in a game. And if they're making 14 of them, that's not really great basketball.
I've seen people suggest certain things, some extreme stuff, but I'm totally against. I heard Dick Wright say eliminate the corner 3. Bullshit. Yep. Don't do that. Let's not go. Let's not attack this. One extreme for another extreme. Let's not do that. The simple thing here is allow physical play. Allow some form of hand checking. That way, that keeps people off the wings as much. It keeps the game more balanced. I think. I think it's an easy fix. I think the NBA, whether they want to embrace it, and is there fear of them going the other way, where like in the 90s you have like games ending 73-70. We don't want that either. But there's gotta be a nice balance here, and I think allowing some physical play is the way to go. Maybe
I totally agree with you, but I thought last year towards the end of the season when they started allowing the guys to play tougher and they started letting some more of it go, I thought it made for great basketball. So I mean,
absolutely.
I'm totally 100% in agreement with you. I don't want to see them do any gimmicks. I don't want to see them changing the floor. I don't want to see them adding 4-point shots. I don't want to see them limiting 3-pointers. I mean, can you imagine if a team got capped at 43s and now you're down by 3 with 8 seconds left?
Stupid.
And you can't shoot a 3 to tie the game. I mean, come on. It's
I heard that suggestion before. And I was like, come on. Look, the problem's easy to fix.
It's like baseball with that golden at bat where it's like, oh, at any point in the game, you can just pick one guy to go up and bat for you. It's like, don't turn this into a gimmick or a sideshow. It's like, keep it basketball, but allow it to be played a little more purely like it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like where it was more physical and guys could eliminate some of the threes by just getting tougher with the offensive player.
Right. I totally agree with you. Anyway, great pod day, man.
Thanks for having me. Always a good time.
Of course, check him out on Twitter at Gee Hrinya NBA. He's the author of The 5-Year Plan, The Next Tumultuous Journey from New Jersey to Brooklyn. What do you have planned for the holidays? What do you got here?
Home. Partly my girlfriend.
You're in Jersey, right? You're in Jersey.
Yeah, in New Jersey, partly my girlfriend's family, partly at mine. So Christmas Eve at one, Christmas Day at the other. So not going too far, but
okay.
The holidays are always good. I'm a big cook. I love food. So
yeah,
this is my time of year.
That's what you're doing in a day job, right? You cook, right?
No.
Oh.
No, that's just something that I do for fun.
Oh, that's awesome. I wish I was like you, man. Seriously, I love food. I like to eat it though. So no, but we'll bring back on at the end of the year, the beginning of the new year rather. Great pod as always, man. I love chopping up with you as always.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to next time.
You got it, brother.